Hi folks, I want to quickly talk about and share a one-page cheat sheet on the road to Bryan Kohberger. What story that the jury will hear about how they nabbed him. How convincing is that story? It's this page here. It looks like a mess, I know, but hopefully by the end of this video it will make complete sense. The reason I want to do this because I went to NUMPTIES Friday night for a peek, and you can imagine my shock to learn from the NUMPTIES that Bryan is being framed and there's no road, there's no path, there's no route to Bryan. They went backwards, and Ann Taylor blew this case wide open last Friday. There are thousands of people online that believe that Bryan Kohberger is being framed. They're going to be around for months and years to come, and I'm sure some of you have seen it. My trip to NUMPTIES came because I was watching the Bryan Kohberger court proceedings last Friday. I was watching it on Judge's, best Judge's name ever by the way, YouTube channel, and I was watching it on a PC, which I usually don't. I usually cast to a TV, or I'm just listening to long live streams with headphones, so I usually don't see live chats. But this one I was watching on a PC, so I got a bit nosy to what people were saying. So I searched YouTube, filtered to live only, and it brought up a few decent channels and a few NUMPTIES channels, which I don't have on my recommended feed because I've a lot of them blocked. But I was like, I wonder what the NUMPTIES are up to. And the NUMPTIES are all over the Idaho 4 case. So I went to NUMPTIES for a quick look, for research purposes, to see what they're up to. And you need to be very careful when you go to NUMPTIES. It can be painful. You will lose brain cells every second you are there. The headache that you get from hearing stupid sentences and reading ignorant comments is brain cells leaving your head. So one needs to be very careful when you go to NUMPTIES. And I'm not being mean calling them NUMPTIES. I'm actually being very, very kind. There are some really big and small content creators and channels making true crime content on YouTube. I love it. You get the best stuff. But it's a wide range for both current and closed cases. All sorts, made for whatever taste you're into and everything in between. But if you get to the bottom of the barrel and you leave your morals and your ethics and your self-respect behind, scrape a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, that's how you get to NUMPTIES. Sometimes it can be hard to tell you've gone to NUMPTIES. Like it is easy just to wander in there by accident. And the channel or district of NUMPTIES that you've wandered into, it might have 10, 20, 70, up to 500,000 subscribers. So it's easy to think that this is too big to be in NUMPTIES. There's too many people here. Don't worry, you have arrived. The NUMPTIES that I went to last Friday had well over 1,000 people watching live. So NUMPTIES is not a small place, but you have to remember this is where all the NUMPTIES live. And there's lots of NUMPTIES floating around, and they can only survive in NUMPTIES. Not everyone in NUMPTIES is a numpty either. Obviously, 100% of the people who are creating content on these channels are, but some of the people watching aren't true numpties. They just got sucked in and are being held hostage by the YouTube algorithm. And some other people are there, they just haven't figured out yet that they're in a NUMPTIES. I've been that person myself a few times. And then you get some people, like myself, who are just there numpty watching. That's what I was doing Friday. It was pure numpty watching. I knew where I was going. It's a well-known NUMPTIES, and it did not disappoint. My God, they couldn't get over Bryan and how sharp he looked. Doesn't Bryan look fab? And they were jumping for joy every time that Ann Taylor spoke. Really deranged stuff. Comments from the host saying that she'd love to drag Ann into the backseat of a car. Look at her, she's so boss, she's so cool. And I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I think I get it. I don't think it's to talk defence strategy in the back of the car. But they could not get over Ann because she said about her client, who is facing the death penalty, that she doesn't know how they got to him. She's been on the case for over a year and she still has no idea how they got to Bryan. A load of nonsense. Bryan Kohberger is going to get cooked, and she's just trying to do what any defence would do really, and try to delay at every single stage. But numpties don't see it like that. She is clearly telling the truth, and Bryan knows he's been framed, and Taylor knows that he's been framed, and the numpties were right all along. Whoop whoop. They went on to say how obviously they got to Bryan backwards because it doesn't make sense. Celebrating, breaking news, there's no path to Bryan, no roads. It's all a big conspiracy confirmed, and Taylor is a ride. These people will be talking about Bryan Kohberger for years to come until another really big tragic case comes along. They've only just finished talking about their idol, Chris Watts, and blaming his wife, Shanann, for what happened. And that happened 6 years ago. So it's Idaho's turn now. And very conveniently for them and their ad revenue, that a big case came along when it did. Because it's all they talk about all day, every day. But anyway, I want to talk about the road to Bryan, the path. Because after this stream, I went back over some of my notes. I haven't looked at them for months, so that was one positive that came out of watching that. The road to Bryan has been laid out for a very long time. The road to Bryan and the jury story is something that I like to do in cases as soon as we can, because just for my own reference, my own memory, it's nice to have it on one sheet that I can screenshot and look at. And I just like to lay out the route to the road to the accused on one page, a little cheat sheet. It looks like a mess, but I want to run through it with you, and I might do it for other cases if you find it of any value. One of the main reasons I do this for myself is I always try to have an eye on the jury story when it comes to trials. How did they catch him, and is that a good story? Because storytelling is vital. A good story is half the battle for any defence or prosecution. How good is your story, and will the jury believe it? So what's the story about how they caught Bryan? There are at least, I believe, 3 separate roads to Kohberger. The first one, and the one I will spend the least time talking about here, is Instagram. If this was the only road, it would take a very long time. They might still be trying to get him, but it looks like there was contact with Maddie's Instagram account. So there would be a road from the victims back to Bryan, but a long, tedious road. All the victims were good-looking college students, so there's a lot of activity on their social media, in their DMs. And we might be hearing more about this at the trial when it comes to a motive, if the defence is going to go into that. The other road is the idiot left a night sheet behind with DNA on it. I'll come back to that road, but that's a perfectly viable road. But the main road here, the highway. This is the road that started when they did a video canvas and found suspect vehicle 1. Good old-fashioned, boring police work, going through thousands of hours of footage and identifying a car that was driving up and past the house several times and then sped off after the murders. They had this completed by the 25th of November, and that's when the Moscow Police Department started asking all agencies to keep a lookout for this car. So that would have gone out to all the police officers and all the college campus police officers, including Washington State University. So 4 days later, on the 29th of November, just after midnight, we have 2 separate police officers that are interested in this vehicle. One officer, Daniel, starts querying. These aren't police officers, these are from Washington State University. So he queries Elantras that are on Washington State University. And then about 30 minutes later, another officer, Curtis, finds the car and he runs tags. So both those actions are tracked. If you enter anything in a database now, they're going to know who searched it and what time. So we have the logs of that. And this is the first time that Bryan's car is identified as the potential suspect vehicle number 1. They go through the CCTV and lo and behold, they have him on camera leaving Washington State University at about 10 to 3 and they have him coming back at about 5:30. Detectives believe that the killings occurred sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. So perfect timing there for Bryan, the time that he left and the time that he got back. So obviously Bryan is immediately flagged up as a potential suspect in this case. They investigate a bit more. They review 2 traffic stop videos. One from the end of August in Moscow, where Bryan, the dope, gave his correct phone number. So now they have him on camera, leaving Washington State University, coming back. They've reviewed footage of past traffic stops and details, and they now have his correct phone number also. There was another traffic stop in Washington State University where the police officer stopped him, and on both times Bryan was the only occupant of the car. He gave his phone number and he had no front license plate. So they're well on the road already at this stage. Jump forward, December 23rd. This was a huge day in the case. Local police officer Brett Payne applied for 2 search warrants. First, he applied for a warrant for the 12th to the 14th of November for Bryan's phone. They get those, they see, hang on a second, his phone was turned off for a few hours while the murders were being committed, and the dope didn't even wait till he got back home. So he didn't even leave his phone at home. All he did was turn his phone off for a few hours, turn it on before he even got back home, and thought that he would get away with this. Also, the next morning he drives back and uses phone towers near the residence. So he was probably going back, seeing was the crime scene discovered. Maybe he was thinking that he dropped the knife sheath on the way out to the car and he could pick it up. But that was the last time he ever went back to the house. So straight away, the same day, both were applied for and granted on the same day. The officer requests all his phone records since he got the phone. That was applied for, that was granted, that was analysed, and it shows without doubt that Bryan Kohberger's phone and suspect vehicle 1 are in sync for months. And he's been driving past, stalking this residence for months. So this road is flying. But I just want to quickly go back up and talk about the DNA, because this would have all been happening at the same time. Take this as like a side road. So the ISB lab finds a single source, DNA. They send that to a private lab and it's converted into an SMP profile. SMP profiles are used when you're building out family trees. So they're trying to work backwards here. The SMP profile is sent back to the FBI and they build out a family tree. And this is when I believe it matches up with that date, December 23rd. That's when I believe that they sent in a tip for Bryan. That's how they treat this. They don't treat it as, we've cracked the case. They treat it as, hey, how many suspects do you have here? Concentrate on this guy. This is just my guess of the timing of the tip. Under Idaho law, they don't have to hand over any workings of how they got the tip. I talked about this in a past video about if they did or didn't use a database that maybe they shouldn't have using. But it's important also to note that this isn't mentioned or it's not a factor in any search warrants that follow on. So they don't get sign off on the search warrants using this information at all because they have loads already. The main road is flying. And back to the main road, a couple of days later, December 27th, they take DNA from the trash from his family home. So they collect his rubbish on the side. And they also catch him throwing some of his rubbish into his neighbour's trash. Very suspicious. The following day, everything's moving very fast there. They get a DNA match from the DNA taken from the trash to the father of the suspect. So obviously the DNA they took from the trash was his dad, not his. But that's fine, that's enough, because his dad has one son. Bryan is arrested. When they arrest him, by the way, he's standing in his kitchen in his underpants with gloves on, separating trash, because he probably knows he left DNA there and he's trying to hide his DNA. He's arrested. They take a fresh DNA sample from him and compare it back directly to the original sample. They apply for a load of search warrants for his car, for his apartment. Don't even know what's in there, but lo and behold, bingo, they got a DNA match. Game over. He got nabbed in a lovely way, and he's going to get cooked. He's going to get taken into the backseat by justice, and then he's going to get dragged to the death chamber. And when this goes to trial, that main road is the story that the jury is going to be told. They're going to be walked through it step by step. This is how we found the car. The officers in Washington State University are going to be called up. They're going to be talked about all the data entries that they did when they were searching for Bryan's car. Next, we're going to have the traffic stops. Then we're going to have the search warrants for the phones. They're going to show the phones and the car are clearly in sync for months. And then we have DNA. It's not complicated. They didn't go backwards. What might have happening is if they did generate a tip, which I think they did, all that did was act as a catalyst. All that did was speed up the process. The road is fine. There's a very clear road, a very clear path to Bryan Kohberger. It's not in danger of being torn apart by Ann Taylor, the defence team. It's rock solid. He's screwed. After he's convicted, he'd probably be on death row for a very long time before they put him down. I think the average in Idaho is at least 20 years. But it will come. Eventually he will be put down. And I really hope the families of the victims are there to see it. Let me know what you think of my page. Good luck. God bless. I hope everyone has a nice day.